Ray, I think all of us are buzzing about the performance of Gennady Golovkin this past weekend from the Madison Square Garden. The big room, he defended his WBA middleweight title successfully against Daniel Geale in 3 rounds. Ray, we've seen a lot of remarkable things in boxing. My question is this before we get to the technical aspect of Golovkin. Have you ever seen a guy hit through a punch the way Golovkin did to deliver a counterpunch the way he did this past weekend?
Well, first, Steve, I was at the fight. I was there. I was 4th row ringside, and I watched this. And this guy's, you know, he's truly one of the great middleweights. And I've said, since Marvin Hagler to James Toney and Roy Jones to Bernard Hopkins, to this guy, I've never seen somebody who can dominate, and I think will dominate for quite a while. His precision punching is remarkable. His movement is so precise that, to answer your question, I think it's because of his foot movement and his balance is why I was able to catch the shot and counter with it at the same time. I've never seen somebody besides Muhammad Ali going backwards and throwing a knockout punch. I swear to God, I never saw anybody do that and do it with such power.
Ray, you know what was amazing? If you actually go frame by frame to what he did, he gets hit, his neck and head get jerked back when he's throwing the punch. Ray, the great thing that he did, he actually redirected his shot. It was like a heat-seeking missile right on the chin of Danny Geale. I think it might be among the most amazing displays of power I think I've ever witnessed.
Absolutely, and it wasn't that he just got was a punch that grazed him. It caught him flush, and his head was going back. It was amazing, but also shows you what fighting's about: getting hit and punching at the same time. You know, my trainer used to tell me, Ray, when a guy fires on you, you got to fire back with him. Meaning, even if you're getting hit, you got to keep throwing it, and hopefully it'll break his attack up. You know what I mean? He got hit, and he threw the punch at the same time, and he caught Geale. And it was a perfect punch, and obviously more powerful. It was just amazing. It was amazing that, and I think the people, when we were watching it, because the fact that he got hit the way he did, and his head snapped, and he threw a punch at the same time and caught the other guy, it was just amazing.
Ray, we've seen the slip and counter. We've seen the catch and counter. We've seen the slip, roll, and shoot. Literally, I've never seen a guy catch to the grill and just blow a guy out of there. Now, here's one of my pet peeves, Ray, and I know you agree with me on this. When people say that he's just a puncher, I don't think that perception could be any more incorrect. There is a precision to what he does.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this guy's, you know, I always said the thing about boxing, the most important part of a fighter is his feet. It gets you into trouble, it gets you out of trouble. It's his feet. You know, boxing is all about balance. It's about distance. You always heard me say it before, Steve, it's about inches and angles. This guy is meticulous with his inches and angles, with his foot movement. His balance is so right on, and his angles and the way he rolls his shoulders. I tell you what, I've never seen a precision puncher like this guy in years. I can't remember last time.
That's an interesting term. Everyone says power puncher. You're saying precision puncher. So does the perception of any fighter that can hit as hard as he can, will that one strength always overshadow the overall skill? Because I've always said this about Tommy Hearns. Tommy Hearns had a atomic right hand. It was a magnetic shot. But if you actually look at him, he could have boxed most of his career with that long reach, educated left hand. Is Gennady Golovkin almost given the one-dimensional tag because of that power?
Oh, I think so. But like you said, it's a misnomer. You know, people are blinded by his power. They don't realize what a good boxer he is. If you watch him, his distance, his movement, he's never out of position. You know, he slides back just enough. He makes the guy miss just enough. You know, when they talk about pound for pound, this guy's at the top, if not the top right now.
Wait. Number 1 in the world, period. Even with the likes of a semi-retired Andre Ward, Floyd Mayweather is still active. Big fan of Guillermo Rigondeaux. I mean, most people have him up there. If you go by the pound-for-pound mythical status, you're saying right now, you might have Triple G at the top.
Absolutely. For my money, he is the best pound-for-pound in the game because he hits like a heavyweight. He has movement like a lightweight. His defense is so exact. I mean, look, you hit him, but you ain't hit him with clean shots. That's the thing people don't understand. I mean, Daniel Geale did, but what happened? He got caught right afterwards. That's what people don't understand. They always talk about fighters getting caught. I always said, yeah, I used to get hit with punches, but very seldom I get hit with 2 solid punches in a row. Because I knew when I got hit, right away, drop and roll. You know? I mean, don't get me wrong. I got hit. This guy doesn't get hit too much. He gets hit with a solid punch, he slides back, he dips his shoulders, he rolls. Very seldom you're going to see this guy hit with 2 solid shots in a row. Pound for pound, this guy, he's a solid 160. I mean, he makes weight with no problem. He's got no body fat, and he's walking guys down. He's going through these guys. He's going through them, over them. He's walking through them.
You said something that stunned me the last time we were here at Hollywood Smoke. You said this is the best middleweight since Marvin Hagler. Gary Shaw, who promotes Daniel Geale, now maybe this is a bit of hyperbole, protecting his guy from a promotional standpoint. He said right after the fight, this is the best middleweight that I've ever seen. Gary Shaw's been around the block. Now, let me just go on the flip side then. Marvin Hagler has been around in this period of time. Bernard Hopkins has been around in this time. Roy Jones has been around in this time. James Toney won his first title at 160. How does he match up with that quartet?
Well, you know, it's funny. We were talking about that earlier, and I think he could have competed with them. Now, would he have been as successful? I don't think so. I think he could have beat some of them, not all of them. I think Marvin would have beaten him because Marvin was just so gritty, one of the greatest chins of all time, always in top shape, throws a lot of punches. But that would have been a war because they were the same height. That's what people understand. When you're talking about guys matching up, it's not matching up, skill-wise also. It's also physical attributes. They were the same height. That would have been a war. But I think Marvin would have overtaken him because I think Marvin's one of the top 5 middleweights of all time. I think Tommy Hearns would have been a headache for him. If he'd have caught
what
Tommy
about the chin, though? Tommy had problems there.
If he'd have caught Tommy first, then I think he could have beat Tommy. But Tommy had that range and and Tommy threw that right hand, like you said, would knock a building down.
Okay, but Ray, what about the athleticism of a Roy Jones and the craft of James Toney?
There you go. Now Roy Jones and him would have been an interesting matchup. I think Roy Jones' movement, Roy Jones, again, his distance in and out. I don't know if Golovkin could have caught up to him. But after you watch him, I think he catch up to anybody because he cuts off the ring. That's what I'm saying. Finally, for anybody who's hit me up on Twitter and Facebook last night about the last comments I made about the other guy, junior middleweight, this guy knows how to cut off the ring. This guy knows how to walk a guy down like you're supposed to. I think Roy, that would have been an interesting fight. That would have been, to me, Roy. It depends who can dictate. If Roy's dictating the pace of the fight, Roy wins. If Golovkin cuts him off, keeps him in the corner, Golovkin can win. I think James Toney beats him because James Toney was one of the most skilled fighters, one of the greatest chins in the middleweight. People don't realize how great a fighter was at middleweight. And James Toney can know how to roll that shoulder and come back with punches. I think Toney beats him. I think Toney, but in a close fight, but I think Toney beats him. Roy Jones, it's a pick 'em fight.
And for those of you who don't know, we want to clarify, the guy that my esteemed colleague called ordinary was Saul Alvarez. I've always said Saul Alvarez is paint by numbers. I really believe that a guy like Golovkin is Picasso because he can actually paint something on the fly. There is an artistry to what he does. I think the most underrated part, Ray, that I really like about Golovkin, flexibility in the upper body. I mean, most of the times when we look at Europeans, what is the stereotype we always say? Stiff and rigid. Right. This guy's actually very fluid and flexible.
Yes, he is. His upper body movement is, he rolls his shoulders like a Western fighter. That's the thing I was impressed with. He's not a typical Eastern fighter. And I think Russia's in Asia.
Yeah, well, Kazakhstan is part of the former Soviet Union as we're going through
well, we're going to go geographical lesson. Remember, I guess we're going to do that. But no, I think, Steve, he's not a typical, he's a Western fighter now. But a lot of his natural movement. It's his God-given ability. And I just watch him and I just say, man, I don't see anybody beating this guy. I think he's there for a long time, as long as he wants to be. Now, they say he can move up to fight at 68 to maybe possibly fight Ward. That would be interesting. They say he can move down to 54, fight Mayweather. I'm not so sure. I looked at this kid. He's got very little body fat. I mean, this kid is ripped. If I'm somebody at 54, like a Floyd, I said, yeah, okay, I'll fight him. Make him drop down to 54 because he would kill himself to make 54. I don't think he could do it. But the guy's special. There's no doubt. And let me say, to go back just for a brief second about the Canelo fight, I want to clarify it. Ordinary, in the sense he doesn't do anything special. He's special in this way. He's a great draw. He's the third biggest draw fight. Pacquiao, Mayweather, Canelo. I don't want to demean his ability or his skill set. He's a terrific fighter, very good fighter. I just don't think he's extraordinary. That's all.
Yeah, so people, lay off Real Boom Boom on Twitter, please. Let's take a look at the realistic possibilities for Gennady Golovkin moving forward. We have Sam Solomon, the current IBF belt holder, Julio Cesar Chavez, who nearly fought him July 19th, Carl Froch, who's a huge draw in the UK, Andre Ward, who's on a self-imposed hiatus, and Miguel Cotto. Ray, we are realists here. We know the boxing business. You know Top Rank. They handled Miguel Cotto. I think they're going to set up a fight in the spring against Canelo, which is cha-ching. That's going to be a lot of money.
Of course.
I don't think Top Rank allows Miguel Cotto to be within 500 yards of Gennady Golovkin.
They're going to avoid him like the plague. Absolutely. They're not going to put that. Bob's smart enough to understand that. Plus, Canelo and Cotto is a major draw. That's a big fight, the Puerto Rican and the Mexican. I mean, international. It just makes sense, of course. Carl Froch has already come on the record and said, I'm going to avoid this guy like the plague. He's already said, I'm going to stay away from Golovkin by all means. So Carl Froch is a heavy-handed puncher. So that just goes to show you the fear that this guy's already bringing and the respect he's gaining from fighters. But Solomon don't mean nothing. Chavez, I got to tell you something.
Now, wait a minute. Ray, I disagree about Solomon, and I'll tell you why, but let me go back to what's going on here. Talked to Aram last night. He says Chavez and Froch, they're going to try to make that fight, at least he is, January 24th in Las Vegas, because that's a lot of money, and I think that's going to be in Las Vegas, pay-per-view. I think by elimination, I think Solomon is the guy you have to face. And you know why? And you may hate to hear this. He has a title belt. And I think for a guy like Golovkin to shut off the avenues, Peter Quillen has a WBO belt. He's with Al Heyman in Showtime, so that's a non-starter. Golovkin needs trinkets. And right now, one of the ways he's going to box guys in to consolidate the division. And I know Solomon is not a great fighter, but Ray, in the position that he's at, I still think he's in a building mode as it relates to the Golovkin brand.
Well, there's no doubt. Hey, Solomon got a title, so I'll never knock his ability. He is a good fighter. He is a very good fighter. He's not a big enough name, I thought, right now. That's what I mean by that. You know, this is where, when it's called show business, this is where business comes into effect. You got to have guys who are draws. And Solomon could be a draw in Europe, possibly, but not in the States. He's not a crossover star.
Yeah, he's actually from Australia. Been on TV here and there. Just recently won the title against Felix Sturm. Very awkward. He's going to throw a lot of punches. He's kind of like a windmill. You were there Saturday night at the Madison Square Garden. They opened up the lower bowl. That was not a bad crowd. I think people have to realize, before Borat, no one knew who anyone was from Kazakhstan, right? I mean, honestly, if you went to the Mount Rushmore of Kazakhs, it would be Borat, a fictional character, and Golovkin, and the other two faces. I wouldn't even know two other Kazakhs, to be honest with you.
Well, it's funny. The thing about that's the thing about Golovkin, that he's very charming and he's very endearing. He's very endearing. You know, when he comes and he speaks, oh, thank you, Mac. You know, with his accent. And I mean, no, not to make fun of him. I thought he's very endearing. And you want to see this guy, and he's got that baby face. Yeah. You know, I call him the baby face assassin. Yeah. You know, and we know Barrera was called that, or you know, but. This guy is, what did you call him earlier?
He's the smiling assassin.
The smiling assassin. That's it. He's a smiling assassin. I think you're right. I mean, for him to cross over, but that's what's going to make him a crossover star, because he is very endearing, and that he fights like crazy, and we know he can punch like a son of a gun, and all of those qualities that Americans want to see in fighters is going to make him a crossover star.
Yeah, Golovkin to me, Ray, is like a much better looking version of Alfred E. Newman. What me worry? And when you have a right hand like that, there's not a lot to worry about. But the risk versus reward quotient right now is still against him. They're building. He didn't build Rome in a day. You don't even build it in 2 years. And he's been in the States since September of 2012. He's 32 years old. And Ray, you retired very early in your career, different circumstances. How many miles on the odometer does he have for a 32-year-old fighter?
Well, again, I've always said, my father said this to me, at 28, if you've been fighting regularly, you're a young man but an old fighter. Now, guys are fighting in their 30s more often now, but the point being is, because he had an extensive amateur career, he has some miles on him. Now, because the way he fights, you know, his movements, you know, not real sharp.
Not getting banged up.
No, he's not. So he's having these fights, and he can do that and extend his career longer. But what you said earlier, Steve, I agree with. He's consolidating the belts, where he's going to trap these guys that they have to fight him, or else they're going to have to vacate, one or the other. because he's doing it the right way. So you're right. Sullivan's maybe the next choice, and then the winner of Chavez and Frach, and then Cotto. Look, Freddie was a couple rows behind me at the fight. After the fight, look, Freddie just smiled. Everyone's looking at him. When are you gonna fight Cotto? When he said Cotto, everyone's looking at Freddie. You're right. Bob ain't gonna let Cotto near him at all, and rightfully so. Rightfully so. Cotto's had a great career. This is not the time for him to take a beating. Let him cash out.
My sources just told me that Bob Arum has put out a restraining order on Gennady Golovkin as it relates to the Puerto Rican superstar.